The Misfits.
Hey everybody, welcome in. It is another Is It Pagan. This time it's actually intentionally an Is It Pagan. We haven't actually done a straight Is It Pagan in a while. Most of the other conversations Joe and I have done ended up having a segment of Is It Pagan in it. But this time we are intentionally doing Is It Pagan. We are going to see how this conversation goes, because depending on your guys' involvement, depending on how far down the, I was gonna say rabbit hole, but it's more like a whirlwind of nonsense we want to go. We'll see how it goes. So those of you that have no idea what's going on, Is It Pagan is one of the, actually realistically, it's the original KFM show. Kingdom on the Road is our flagship because it's been going on for a long time, even before the main lineup got in there and way before KFM started. But Is It Pagan was really the first regularly occurring. Go ahead. Yeah. What? Yeah.
Cross-branded, regularly occurring show on the network.
Yes. And so it started as a joke because we were already doing these conversations and asking the question all the time. And then people seem to like it, so we decided to keep going with it. So
the first one was almost satirizing the whole argument about Christmas and paganism and the whole 9 yards and that whole schmoz of nonsense.
Was it Christmas or was it Halloween that was our first one?
I thought it was Christmas, but maybe it's Halloween. I don't know. It's 1A and 1B. It's the two big ones.
Yeah, we also had, you and I also had at that point, after we did that first round of Christmas and Halloween, we also started doing every year where we were also getting together during Holy Week and doing a cross-branded, which the whole Easter Pagan came in at that point. It became something where it just became a regular occurrence, almost out of habit, I guess, tradition, whatever you want to call it. But then we just kept doing it. And then the network came about, which was even better. So, we do and normally around this time of year. So this last week of November, first week of December is typically when we started doing these. And so for tradition's sake, we're doing another one at this exact week again this year. Last year, we looked at fantasy literature and we looked at Tolkien and we looked at Lewis and everything like that. We've already done Christmas. We've already done Halloween. Thanksgiving, I think we did Thanksgiving actually, didn't we? Yeah, we did. We did a Thanksgiving one also. So all the holidays are covered. So what are we going to do now? We're going to have a little bit of fun. Those of you that saw the ads we put out, we jokingly titled this, Is It Pagan the Musical? And for everybody's ears, I am not going to sing anything. You're welcome. Joe is an actual trained, he knows music. He's a musician. But unless he wants to break out the guitar, we're not actually going to be doing any musical numbers that I'm aware of, at least. But what we are going to do is we are going to talk through Is It Pagan? And we're going to talk about music as far as, is it actually pagan? Because anybody, and this is one of those where it sounds like a generalization and I say it a lot, but this is pretty much a guaranteed you've heard it. Anybody that has been within any sort of organized Christianity within the United States has heard some artist or type of music genre or performance labeled as demonic or pagan or Satan worship, or insert any of those different titles and descriptors here. Recently, there's been an uptick in a lot of this as well. There was a big thing about Taylor Swift being demon possessed. There was a big thing about just about any Super Bowl performance over the past 5 years being demonic. There have been a lot of concern over Skillet's new Christmas song that they released being demonic because he growls one time. There are concerns about AI taking over Christian music. There are, there are just anywhere you look at this point, we can find something within some style of genre where somebody has pointed and say, "Look, this is demonic. Why are we supporting it?" This isn't new, though. This has been going on for a long time. So, Joe, I want to actually start with this with you because you are, one, the musician between the two of us, and two, you are newer to this kind of world of Christianity, but you're also our expert in all things spooky within the network as well. When was the first time that you heard somebody talking about music as being some kind of demonic entryway or pagan ritual or anything like that?
So I'm not sure it was as fully developed a thought as to say that it was pagan in the like we're actually going to explain ourselves sense, more so than just a it's worldly and thus stay away from it sort of thing. But we're talking about like the random youth group things that I went to when I was a teenager, and my parents were trying to get me to go to youth group and all of that jazz. Um, it's essentially a look at your. It's an extension of the idea that you're set apart in the sense of separate from the world, like you don't consume anything that's of the world and all of that jazz. And so I remember that like there were like huge pushes to like throw out all of your CDs and get rid of all of your music that wasn't Christian and all of that sort of stuff. Like there was no progression of or nuance of if this then bad. It's just bad. It's all bad. Every single last bit of it. Christian shouldn't be engaging with it. Why would you want to? The whole nine yards. And yeah, I and we'll get to preference. That's separate from
Right.
actually being afraid that this is in some way, shape, or form evil, and that you are sinning or disrespecting God by listening to it.
And that's where we'll clarify for everybody here as well. We're not talking preference yet. Like Joe said, we'll get there, but that's not what we're talking about yet. So some examples of what we're talking about here is I know the big one is Pink Floyd is the one that most people point to. But there also were conversations about it with the Beatles and stuff as well. We're talking about things like people claiming that the Dark Side of the Moon album, if you play it backwards, is some like Babylonian chant.
By the time, so being steeped heavily in that world growing up, I can tell you that by the time the late '90s rolled around, that was kind of generally accepted as myth and mythology, not
Right.
like not taken seriously past that point. But yes, there was a push that was a an extension of an idyllic look similar to what we have now at the '90s, an idyllic look at the '70s,
Mm-hmm.
and music and all of that sort of stuff, and kind of this look at like that holdover from that era of music where like this is the stuff that's like, this is you don't this seems like they were tapped into something. It's kind of like um the old wives' tale that Bob Dylan sold his soul to the devil in
Right.
order to be as successful as he is, sort of thing.
Well, and it's the reason I went there first is that a lot of this is tied to the Satanic Panic during
Okay.
that same time period. But the Bob Dylan one is actually a good example. But the reality is that most of this is actually just it's a recurring pattern where the
Yeah.
same myths are just taken and replaced and put on whatever the current genre artist is. The Bob Dylan, myth realistically was nothing more than just a retelling of the I can't even think of what the actual name of the folk tale is, of the idea of the fiddling with the devil or whatever it is, the golden fiddle and all that. That's literally all it is. It's the exact same story. But once you replace the mythology with a contemporary person, suddenly it becomes a conspiracy. Is the only word I can think of to put with it. But this is still happening because even though, like you said, the Pink Floyd stuff was already gone, that still is coming in. This is part of the thing I heard arguments about why people shouldn't have listened to rap music. Because you can't understand them because they're not actually speaking English, even though you can understand them, it's just they're speaking too fast for you, is really what's going on. There are people that have claimed, there's still these claims about mumble rap now. These kind of things are what we actually are addressing when we're talking about this idea of the paganism side of it. The preference side of it we'll get to in a little bit. In traditional Is It Pagan fashion, we're going to handle this part of it very, very quickly because it's very easy to do.
Yeah.
Music
So,
itself is not pagan.
no.
It's a tool and it's a cultural identifier. Different cultures have different styles. Different cultures use music in different ways. We talked about this. What week was it? We talked about this on Kingdom on the Road. Actually, we talked about this a lot throughout Samuel. Music was part of the way that news was spread throughout Israel. Saul has killed his thousands, David his tens of thousands was a song that was shared over and over and over. There was another song that we did a few weeks ago where the Philistines had heard it before David had. These sort of things, music was how it was carried. So music itself is not pagan. It's a very simple answer to that question. And then we'll get into the other stuff. But what were you going to say, Joe? Go ahead.
So I'm going to disagree with you a little bit. Music can be pagan, but it's not inherently. It's like anything. What are you using the tool for?
Right.
What are you using the practice for? What are you doing with it? And that's where an incredible level of nuance needs to be applied in asking the question of what are these lyrics doing to me? What is the original messaging behind all of that sort of stuff? But I'm musically, I come from two different worlds that are very commonly ostracized for having pagan roots, and that's metal
Mm-hmm.
and that's blues. And both of those, for different reasons, they've had an ongoing reputation that this is not a musical style that can convey holiness, that
Mm-hmm.
can convey a message of God, because inherently the roots of the form of music date back to something sinister, something pagan, or something worldly, or whatever. Um, and that's where bands like Skillet have come under fire, which I think is hilarious
Yes, it is.
because they are like John Cooper has been the poster child for modern day conservative Christianity and this whole idea of warrior Christianity and this whole
Hmm.
idea of you need to stand for what's right and speak truth in all situations. But what that means in his mind is something very, very specific and something very, very isolated and something very, very particular. Now, my whole thing when it comes to people like Taylor Swift and people like Skillet, okay, don't be afraid of what they're saying or singing as if it has any kind of power. Don't not listen to
Right.
them for that reason. Don't listen to them because they suck. Because Skillet is a horrifically terrible band, and Taylor Swift is overrated. Just to simply put, is overrated. So like, feel free to not like any of these artists for very valid reasons because their music is garbage, but not because Taylor Swift is going to cast a spell on you
Right.
because of whatever she's singing about and all that sort of jazz.
I made sure to write down that timestamp because that's going to be a clip we're going to use in a lot of places.
Yep. Yep.
Now, there's two things actually that I think you can take us from there, because the first one, though, I think is something we need to get out of the way right away, and this is something we do any time that we have the Is It Pagan discussion. Really, realistically, oftentimes the Is It Pagan question comes out of a theology centered on fear.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
Regard.
Hang on. You've only got part of the equation. And this matters. This matters a lot because both I could point to instances in both styles and genres of music. And I can point to a lot of the same other periphery issues that are happening within music right now that people are up in arms about that 100% come out of um, American American ignorance. Like I'm gonna be that guy.
Yeah.
It's cool. You can send any and all responses to buddywalkpod@gmail.com, but I'm very much gonna go ahead and be this guy on that. In America, we are incredibly ignorant. Like holy
Yeah.
crap! Like America is the pinnacle, the benchmark, the epitome of ignorance in the world. Like just no conceptualization of the world post or pre 1776, no concept of where any of this stuff comes from, no concept of the roots. And if like in the sense of blues, you have even a hint of actual understanding of the history of the musical style, well, where ignorance leaves off, racism picks up. And
Yes.
so like it's
100%.
it's just kind of
100%.
one of those things, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? So when we look at all of this, yes, okay, some overrated musician with a bad beard cut and a pseudo masculine presence to himself. Like, also, guys, just in case you need to know this, just in case you didn't understand this, if a musician needs to posture themselves like they're the toughest guy in the room, they're not. They're not. I promise you, they're not. They're playing bad dad music. They're playing bad divorced dad rock, and they're presenting themselves like they're tougher than they actually are. Anyway, um, but
This has got to be more entertaining than if this was actually a musical at this point. I have a feeling
yeah.
this is more entertaining than that.
But when you got some dude growling into a microphone and all of that sort of stuff. And suddenly, this poster child for everything that manly men in Christianity should be up to, and all this sort of stuff, th- they're they're cannibalizing him. Like they're they're eating one. They're eating one of your own. Like what?
Mm-hmm.
Like they have served you one of your own, and you are gladly cannibalizing
Yeah.
one of your own people, and all because it's a different vibe from what you're used to or what is traditional in this country or different things like that. And so when we really process this, we cannot we cannot just let it set at fear, because while fear is part of it, dude, we need to talk about
Yeah.
the absolute teetotal ignorance that hovers around the subject of music and all of that. So I'm
Yeah.
going to go ahead and I'm going to go on a rant here for a second, because it also ties into the whole AI thing. And I'm going to burst some people's bubbles here for a second, and y'all might get mad at me, but I need to smarten some folks up when it comes to music. I don't know who needs to hear this, but your favorite Christian music. You can think of it. I don't care. Take your pick, whatever it is. Your favorite your favorite Christian song came off of a whiteboard in likely Nashville, Tennessee. That is a simple equation, because they've cracked the code on what's popular and what to get people to flock and buy a CD or to flock to Spotify and listen to. They have cracked the code on staying relevant and popular. And people lap it up. People lap it up like they would never know the difference. Like they fall for it like a mark. And so anytime that you are listening to something popular on the radio, and friends, this is also secular music too, it comes from an equation, because the music industry is a business and they want to keep you hooked like a mark.
Yeah.
And so every time you get wrapped up in the hot new artist, the new messaging, the new wave of music, and all of that sort of stuff, y'all marketers sat there, developed out the thought, handed it to musicians. They gladly did it
Mm-hmm.
because they know it's going to make millions. And they know that the more that they rattle people's cages and get people talking, the more that you're going to go listen to it.
Yeah.
There are some of you that will have never known that Skillet listen or put out a bad Christmas cover and all of that sort of stuff. And now, because of the hubbub about it, you'll go listen to it, and ultimately, they've won. So that's why I can tell you with complete and total confidence, I don't need to hear the song to know
Mm-hmm.
all. I could hear whatever stupid growl that John Cooper did that sounds like garbage anyway. That I can hear it in my head. And so why would I go and support anybody who's showcasing his music if I already know the beats of it? And I already know exactly what people are up in their feels about. Like, I don't like Christmas music to begin with. Skillet covering Christmas music sounds like the seventh layer of hell. That's just playing on repeat in the seventh layer of hell. I didn't know if you know that or not. But all of these arguments, all of these, I'm on the righteous moral high ground as
Right.
far as all of this goes. You're a mark. You've been hooked like a mark. You have fallen for it like a mark. I promise you, because people want that exactly. I'm the villain in this conversation. I promise you. I'm not going to hold back, because this is a stupid argument. Because of all of the things that we are going to sit here and go back and forth about, at least some of this stuff has teeth. At
Yeah.
least some of this stuff of wrestling with, is it pagan? There are people who are genuinely genuinely worried about like I'm glad Gio agrees with us. There's people who are like, I don't want to do the wrong thing, and I've got all of these voices telling me that this is pagan and that that's pagan. And to all of the people who wrestle with the holidays and all of that kind of stuff, history lesson. I'm begging you, take a history lesson.
Yeah.
I'm begging you, understand how history pre 1776 works. You will be so much better for it. I promise you that. This this is dumb. I got nothing for y'all because
Yeah.
this is something that is just one of those things that when you look at it and you can extend this out to, oh, AI is taking over music. Music has been automated for literal decades.
Yeah.
Friend, this has been an equation. They just plugged it into a computer that can automate the process for you. That's all.
I mean, the joke has always been, for at least, well, since I was a kid even, so at least 30 years, the joke has always been that you only need to know 3 chords to be able to be the lead guitarist for a worship band. Like, it's
As a
literally
musician, I can tell you that it's not just worship. You really only need to know 3 chords and you can play a lot of music.
right. I mean, so it's always been this way. You know, you know, the big thing with it, the reason I said fear is that and that's why I said this is the big thing for most of the Is It Pagan conversations we have, is part of what you're saying is this idea of that, and normally it's parents worried that their kids are going to be influenced by something, or that they're going to be hexed or cursed or whatever. That's Go back and listen to any of the other episodes we've done. Go back and listen to the entire, realistically, you can even go back and listen to the entire, however many videos Thoughts from a Bearded Geek did during spooky season, going through horror as a genre and things like that. You can go through the entire thing. I think it was you that was with me. You and Ant did one on fear theology and everything else to know that that's not how this stuff works. Like, you don't accidentally fall into this kind of stuff.
There's a movie that came out over in this past year called Sinners.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah. That was a big discussion. Yeah.
yeah, Sinners was such like okay, uh for anybody who's watching this who would then be like, "Oh, hey, let me put that on my watch later list." Okay. Quick disclaimer, it is a horror movie. It is a rated R horror movie. And it's a rated R horror movie that I would argue Ryan Coogler would have dealt with an editor just being like, you're lingering on this like 10 seconds too. Like, it's just there's a little bit of, like, don't get me wrong, he made the movie that he wanted to make, and God bless him for it. But that it earns every single solitary bit of the rated R. So this is a Christian show. Feel like I need to give the disclaimer. But the entire premise of this is it is a love letter um, to vampires, and it is a love letter to blues music and the history of blues
Mm-hmm.
music. And there's a scene where there is a car full of people, all of them POCs. And mind you, we are set in the 20s?
I think so.
Chicago? Not
I think
Chicago.
so. Let's see.
The South. Yeah. It's the Jim Crow South. Like so very so
1932 Mississippi.
there it is. Okay. Um and so they're talking, and they're the dude's relaying a horrific story that happened to one of his to somebody that he knew, but he says a line in the midst of it that is so incredibly true about blues and like the root of all of these different forms of music. White people love the blues. A lot of white people don't like the people making the blues. And so that's there's a duality there. where you start to talk about the history of rock, because we want to talk about rock. And in this country, we love rock, and that's cool. I love rock. It's fine. But any, take it back, literally any music that you can think of in this country has its roots in blues.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and there's an awesome, stunning scene, so cool. The way that they shot it, where it's just this whole idea is when you sing the blues, it's like this beacon where you are connecting with the past, the present, and the future, and all of that sort of stuff. And like there's this scene where dudes playing, and you're literally going through the different eras of expressions of music that are all based off of the blues,
Mm-hmm.
from rock to hip hop to metal, and all of these different expressions of it. But there's this underbelly of blues, because a lot of it is tied to spiritual songs, and a lot of it is infused with a particular belief system, or a particular way of conceptualizing the spiritual world, that coupled with incredible racism
Mm-hmm.
has deemed anything from that era, plus or minus some more country folk esque outliers of the blues scene, like a Johnny Cash or somebody like that, who is very white, for those of you that don't know. Shocker. But it's very much born out of that duality of fear of something that is other than blonde-haired, blue-eyed, white evangelicalism, and fear of the devil and hell-based theology, and ignorance
Mm-hmm.
to being willing to see what another group brings to the table with their influences and all of that sort of stuff. So in the midst of all of that, because the movie does not shy away from the fact that it's born out of the 30s, that everybody that's involved would be bringing their own thing to this melting pot, and it's very much a movie talking about colonization,
Mm-hmm.
that it's not going to shy away from the spiritual practices of the people involved. It would be disingenuous
Yeah.
if it did. And so, and again, Ryan Coogler, who is a POC, is tapping into his heritage in talking about this stuff. But in the midst of all of this is this love letter to the blues, and this form of music. And for me, it was resonant because it reminded me of back in the day when I would play the blues saloon out in Minnesota, and after the set would be done, usually myself and some old heads would kill a bottle of whiskey, and I would listen to their stories, and I would just hear from their point of view, and the history of where they learned how to play, and the history of the music, and all of that sort of stuff. And I was getting this education on this form of music that was passed down from generation to generation to generation.
And that's where, I think there's a couple of things with that. I think one of the things that we'll go here, because this is the next place I was going to go from the fear thing, and it feeds into this idea of the fact that there's a history and a storytelling with it as well, and we'll get there here soon. I just went back and looked. Joe and I actually originally planned to have this discussion a year ago, pretty much today, because I was starting to notice some stuff from some different songs, and was asking him as the musician about his background with it and things like that. And then it caused me to ask this question on Twitter, which it went out on November 22nd, 2024. But we asked the question of, for those that were told that rock and roll or rap music was satanic, what was the reason that you were given? And the choices that we listed was it because of the music itself, like the musical structure? Was it the lyrics, or was it the instruments? And it was interesting, the results, because 50% said it was the lyrics that they were told was satanic. But the rest were divided. 25% said it was the musical structure. The other 25% said it was the instruments. And this is where we get into why Joe was talking about the fact that more than some of the other Is It Pagan conversations, this one has a little bit more nuance. And the reason it has more nuance is due to part of what Joe was just talking about with the history of everything, with the unfortunate reality that a lot of it is built out of white supremacy and racism. You've also got the reality that you have people not legitimately scared, people that were legitimately told to fear certain instruments and things like that, which unfortunately also falls back into the white supremacy stuff as well. You've got there's a lot of different reasons why people were told such and such music was a problem, such and such music you need to stay away from, such and such, all this other kind of stuff. The lyrical side of it is, well, actually, I'm going to ask you this, Joe. You as a musician, I've heard different things, and we already talked about the fact that this doesn't even necessarily apply to a lot of mainstream music anymore because it's all just controlled by the algorithm. But in a purist sense, you as a musician, do you start with the music or do you start with the lyrics?
I start with the music. I care more. There are songs that are a part of my child that I really dig musically, that lyrically don't make a lick of sense, or they're just not. It's just not a message that I necessarily would vibe with. And the reality is that some of them that are songs that I don't necessarily vibe with. My musical taste has pruned over the years, as it does with anybody, as it does with anybody. But one of the it's an agreement that I have with the group of people that stick to I only listen to Christian music. When you listen to music, something physiological takes place
Mm-hmm.
when you're hearing these different combinations of chords, riffs, and combinations of instruments and all of this sort of stuff, and the tone and the tenor and all of this stuff. It's all going to elicit a physiological response because of vibrational patterns, because your body is literally resonating with the music that you're hearing. Um, there are exceptions to the rule. There are songs that lyrically I love, musically I cannot stand. And vice versa, like taking it within the Christian world. There is an artist called One Love,
Mm-hmm.
who he's got a whole story about how he used to be an EDM artist and a raver and all of this sort of stuff, and then he found Jesus and all of that. When you listen to some of his stuff where he gets a little preachy, there are some theological things that he posits that I'm like, I don't know if I necessarily follow you on that one, but I know that your music is really, really solid. Um, Here I am to worship classically, like in the classical sense. I fundamentally hate that song because the music for it is garbage.
Yeah.
It is broken. It is not good. Lyrically, stands up. It's great. He totally revamped it into like kind of like a metalcore version. that is phenomenal. Like it is really, really very um and that like so to me it was somebody taking this song that was a lyrical juggernaut and finally presenting it in a way that resonated with me.
And that's where this is why the preference thing has to come into play as well. Is that the even the things that we were the reasons that some of us were given, like we said, unfortunately the reality is that a lot of the reasons that we were given for why things were pagan or why they were not around the music discussion is ultimately found in white supremacy. I mean, the idea of the drums being a sign of Satanism is out of drums are what pagans used to worship. I mean, fundamentally, that's exactly where it comes from. It's not even hard. I'm pretty sure a Google search, that may be even the first thing that's going to pop up. If you ask Google, why is it that the church said drums were satanic? That's probably going to be the first thing that comes up in an article. Like it's just the way it is. The fact that you still have churches that are afraid of guitars. It's why you still have churches that are afraid of all of these different instruments. Some that still refuse to have instruments in their building is because of the fact that the history behind the instrument and where it came from causes the ignorance and the racism and the fear theology that is at the core of where they're at as a whole to cause them to force things out. And this is where the big theology push comes in that we talked about in the fear thing, is that if your theology is causing you to push everything away, that's the opposite of what the gospel is supposed to do. The gospel should be calling you to draw things in, not to be pushing them away.
So I will tell you this. I can pretty much pinpoint where somebody misunderstands the idea of the role of the body of Christ within the larger world and misunderstanding what the point of Christians being in the world is if they tell me that because they're Christian, they avoid worldly things. I can pretty much pinpoint that one for one because there is a fundamental misunderstanding when we start talking about being holy and set apart. I want this entire part of my life to only reflect God. Okay, as long as you haven't taken it the bridge too far to say that the people who don't agree with that are wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I would ask you why. If it's just a submission of an aspect of your life, cool. I don't have a problem with that. I'm not gonna pick at how you express your worship life. That's not on me to do. What I am gonna do is poke back when when I hear somebody say that we are called to be holy and set apart from the world. And my immediate question is, then what do you do with the literal countless examples given to us in scripture
Right.
that insinuate that we are in the body for the sake of others
Mm-hmm.
within the world, not just Christians? Because again, just Christians, just being in it for Christians, I would argue that church on Sunday is for Christians, not, you know, unbelievers, which is an entire other conversation about the whole idea of being seeker friendly and all of that sort of stuff and how that's American marketing.
Yeah.
I'm just popping a whole lot of bubbles today for people.
Well, you're also giving some insight into what you and I have cooking for later episodes in the coming year. But
Yeah.
spoiler alerts.
But so I immediately ask, okay, then what do you do with that? All of these other examples that conflict with what you're saying. Then why then would we be called to just not engage with the rest of
Right.
humanity and all of that sort of stuff? And I dare you that if you're somebody who wrestles with this, extrapolate out the thought process, man. Think about it. Ask those questions. What do you have to lose other than an idol or two down?
Yeah.
Other than an idea that you and that's part of what, like, so I'm coming off of a season right now where it's a lot of teaching about Bible literacy and Old Testament and all of that sort of stuff, and it's very much it was very much an intensive look and reminder as to where we sit in the world's timeline. Now, I don't know. I'm not here to talk about, 7 days, 7 billion years, whatever the case may be. All I can tell you is that the first chapter of Genesis is in a scientific statement. That's all I can say. Anyway, um, it's but when you start to track with the documentation of human history,
Mm-hmm.
and then you start to look at where do things actually come from, and where does the world at large sit within documented history? And then where does America sit in all of that? And especially when you start to talk about the different things that are going on, like, yo, for anybody, for anybody who has it twisted about where America sits and all of that sort of stuff, I I beg of you to go and look at the history of how different parts of the world became third world countries.
Yeah. 100%.
And
100%.
you are going to see when and then look at and I can tell you firsthand, and this might not seem connected, but it's all connected. It's all connected because it's all the same mindset. It's all the
Yeah.
same stupid, ignorant mindset that we get to start looking and splitting hairs on this and all of that sort of stuff. I've been there, front lines, with people literally walking from church to church and asking, "Yo, you have some food?
Mm-hmm.
Can I get some food? Are you outside of your friggin' mind that you think that that's not a problem? That you think that we aren't running into a giant brick wall where people are going to go hungry and not have medical insurance? Y'all, guess what other countries can't feed their people and people go without medical coverage? Hello, like I'm just saying,
And it's
it's been an intensive look at the where this country sits in the world's timeline in the profound level of ignorance
yeah.
that is present within this country, and how this is all built off of, because literally when you have a country that was created by people who owned people, the only place you're getting is slaveholder theology.
Yeah.
The only place you're getting is ignorance. The only place you're getting is white supremacy. The only place you're getting is inherited generational time over time over time bigotry and lesser than thinking. It doesn't matter. There are people who look at redheads and look at, hey,
Yeah.
look at that stupid Mick. Hey, there are people who look at people with POCs and think of every single disgusting word that comes out of that can come out of their mouth. People look at the Romani and they start using words like gypsy. All of this sort of stuff, I understand, y'all. I'm calling it out for a reason, and I understand what I said, and I understand what I did. And it's because sometimes we need to look the dog straight in the face so that way we have nowhere to hide. And when we talk about this, we can sit here and pat people on the back and be like, hey, somebody growling, bad music is bad music. Don't listen to Skillet because they suck. Don't not listen to them just because they growl in their
Right.
music. And oh hey, BT dubs. Metal can also be used to worship God too, y'all. Blues
Shout out
can
August
also
Burns
be
Red.
worship to God, y'all. You know what I mean? Like it's not just all this very poppy same
Yeah.
over like and that's and but it's not gonna doesn't do anything. It doesn't do it because there's always another thing. Okay, so if we can't okay, so we can listen to music. But I'm not going to watch that movie because that movie's of the devil. Because that movie is showing people the devil. Like it's all coming from the same place,
Yeah.
and we're scared because we've been taught to be scared. Because some of the same stuff gets passed down from generation to generation to generation because this is the good Christian way of doing it. This is the good conservative way to do it.
Yeah.
That's part of where the rubber meets the road when we're talking about this stuff, because we're not working off of the same template as some of the other people that are talking about this sort of thing, because we're working off of a template that looks at the entirety of human history, not just everything that happens post 1776.
And this is where, for those that still can't figure out how, we got to colonization and exploitation of foreign countries out of Is Music Pagan. It is actually directly connected when we're talking about the church's role in all of this. Because for those that haven't, going back way into the Misfits archives, you can find episodes from Joash Thomas and Alan Varghese. And from Prudy Ray also. We did this also with Prudy, where we looked at the history of the church in India. And we can extrapolate out from the Church of India into also Africa and other parts of Asia as well. So non-European church history is really what we're talking about here. They had the gospel. India had the gospel before Europe had the gospel. I mean, and Africa had the gospel before Europe had the gospel, because we read about the Ethiopian eunuch being baptized and going back before we even get to Paul. Like, it's not arguable. Like, this is straight out of the narrative of Scripture. We have this. But what happens is that when the theology of colonization enters the chat, the Crusades, the colonies, all these different things where suddenly now European Christianity, white Christianity, is being exported into all of these other countries. This other example of how the Spirit is moving and the gospel is working is looked at as pagan, even though it's Christianity, even though it's Christian doctrine, even though it's older Christianity than what they're practicing, is looked at as pagan because of where they come from and the methods that they're using and the fact that their cultures are still tied into it and all these other things. And because that has happened, we now have to convert them, or we have to enslave them and take them somewhere else that they'll learn how to be good Christians. And this doesn't stop there.
Let me jump in because I want to give a very, very tangible example of what it is that you're referring to. You know where else that happened? The Roman Empire.
Yeah.
You know where else that happened? The Crusades.
Yeah.
This whole idea of a gospel presentation and this whole idea of an altar call and this whole idea of one grand statement that seeks to convert the people comes from the mentality of turn or die.
Yeah.
Don't again.
Repent or perish is a literal statement for some people.
Yeah, I beg of you, Do some world history. And it's something as simple as this. Something as simple as this. Okay. So people pray the whole 9 yards. You enter the church. You take your hat off. I want everybody to ask yourselves the question: where does that come from? Why? Why is it such a big deal? Oh, because your grandfather told you that that's what you do when you enter into a church. Okay, great. Where did he learn it from? I'm asking. I'm asking. You want to know where that came from? The Roman Empire, because people took their hats off, or people took their helmets off when they entered into a building. That's where the tradition comes from. It's not in the Bible. There's nothing holy about it. God never said you're not allowed to wear a headpiece when you enter into a building. I promise you, those words never came out of God's mouth in a
And
way
in
that was
fact,
documented. And if it was something for all of time, you would think, oh, I don't know, this gimmick called the Bible would have something in it.
well, and that's where I was going with is, I mean, we had this discussion. One of the first Misfits Outdoors attempts we tried, we had this discussion about dress code within the church.
Mm. Yeah.
Dress code, the idea of Sunday best. Like if you actually look up the term Sunday best, the etymology of Sunday best began during segregation. Why? Because suddenly white churches put a dress code on who could enter their building and who could not. And of course, it was going to be a higher class of clothing because the newly freed enslaved peoples could not afford that. Now, the argument that and then this is also explains why within the black church now, Sunday best is such a big thing because it's not a celebration of segregation. It's a celebration of look where God has brought us.
Yeah.
And that is a different story. That's a story of redemption as opposed to a story of opposition. And this is the same thing when we get into the music stuff as well. Because now, what do we have churches doing in all these foreign countries? We send over a mission team to plant a church over there, but we plant a copy of our church here. And so we're bringing white evangelical theology into these other countries, and we tell them they have to get rid of all the things that culturally identify them. Their music styles, their dress, the language that they use, all these different things have to now fit into the thing, and they use 1 Thessalonians 5 as their reasoning. And this is why I'm bringing this up, is because what Joe pointed to was this idea of we have to be set apart. That's what we are told here in the U.S. But in other countries, the same message is given, but it's not be set apart. It's don't have the appearance of evil. Because your culture, your identity, all these other things are evil. And so if you still use those things, you have the appearance of evil. And so you must remove everything that isn't white evangelical Christianity from among you. And it's all about control. Because the reality is, we said this from the beginning that we are going to get there eventually. The music discussion for 98% of the discussion should actually be about preference. When, Joe talked about the fact music is more of what he listens to than he doesn't necessarily listen to stuff for the lyrics.
Yeah.
I'm the opposite. The lyrics are what's going to draw me in. Now, certain styles draw me in more, but that's because typically certain styles do better with lyrics. Just saying. Punk, hardcore, and hip hop have better lyrics than just about any other genre. And a lot of it is because of the fact all three of those things are built out of the blues culture, which is what Joe was just talking about. Like, it's not hard to figure out where our preferences come from and things like that when we understand the history. But we have to be willing to actually understand the history of it and be willing to also be okay with what we find. Because what we're going to find is that a lot of us that grew up in white evangelical churches, the history we have been given, especially in relation to these sort of conversations, is wrong.
And I want to talk in the same way that somebody that I didn't necessarily need it poked, but this is kind of where I fortified my stance, I guess is a good way of putting it. Okay, so what's the benchmark? Let's think about that for a second. If the benchmark is we can't use drums, we can't
Mhm.
use guitar, we can't use certain forms of musical instruments. Okay, question. What about the bands that are? And that, hang on, because those people are also leading other people in worship. So, do all of those, every single person involved in that, is that entire expression invalid because they're using drums and they're using guitar and whatever else? Likewise, if we are talking about, okay, this is bad, then if it's not music and you don't care whether or not the musical instruments are included or whatever, okay, then is it theology based, like
Yeah.
the lyrical content? Oh, okay. So you're telling me that K-Love is the epitome of theological accuracy? I'm just saying. Go back to, what was that song? It was the first year. I want to say it was the first year I got saved, or it was like on the tail end of where I got saved. I don't know. It's a terrible song, but people were up in the fits about it. Reckless love, right? That's a God's love is reckless, or the whatever. Corey
Yeah.
Asbury,
Yeah.
as whatever. Um, people lost their friggin' minds. God's love is not reckless. It's the same time that a little movie that I've talked about on this network before came out. Same time period. God's not dead.
Mhm.
Okay. A pastor sitting with an evil college professor that wants to kill Christianity, who just got hit by a car. No, I'm not gonna call an ambulance. I'm not gonna call the cops. I'm not gonna call anybody. I'm gonna sit with you while you die. That's all I'm gonna do. And I'm not gonna try to get you help in any way, shape, or form. I'm gonna remind you of how terrible you were and sit with you as you die.
Mhm.
Like that's I'm but again, I go back to, for anybody who has a moralistic problem with this, you're showing your John Hahn parts. You are. You're flapping out in the wind, friend, because eventually you've got to answer the question: what makes it morally wrong? What makes it incorrect to do that?
Yeah.
Beyond you don't like it, beyond it doesn't vibe with you, beyond a conviction, beyond a personal statement, what makes it wrong at Skip? And
And
that's where you have to start, like okay, so if theology isn't the thing and musical content isn't the thing, then what's the thing? Or are we throwing it all?
yeah.
Because none of it's theological. And there are some people that will 1000% um only listen to like true gospel music, right? Like praise music, word, like
Mhm.
that sort of thing. I could not imagine only listening to praise music. I would go out of my mind. I would stop listening to music at that point.
Well, and here's the thing, like, and we're back to the idea of preference, and we're back to the things that, like, for me with lyrically, the modern praise music lyrically doesn't really do anything for the most part. The now let me clarify. Most mainstream modern praise music, there is a lot of worship music out there that is, and it's rejected by a lot of churches. And the reason that they claim it's rejected is because of theology, but the reality is it's because it's coming out of a theological family that is historically not white. There's no other way to say it. Again, this is the pattern. We've already shown you the history of it. This is the pattern.
Yeah,
It's not just, oh, we're trying to make everything about race. No, like, legitimately, this is where this discussion comes
yeah,
out
no,
of. There's no
yeah,
way to
yeah,
not have this discussion and not say that.
yeah.
But and this is part of where, like, so it was when um when my daughter died, we were asked about what kind of music we wanted at the memorial service. My wife had a very long list of praise music. The pastor turned to me and said, "Do you have any to add?" I said, "No, because I don't think that you would be able to take what I need and add it to a memorial service."
Yeah.
Because outside of Rich Mullins, there wasn't anybody on that list that even the most open progressive, style churches are going to look at that and say, "Yeah, this is a great style of worship music."
Yeah. Yeah.
It just isn't. But going back and looking through my walk with God, my history with Christianity, my history with the church, all this other stuff, the lyrical style that has best helped me with my walk is one that people classify as angry and destructive and demonic. And a lot of it, again, it has to do with this idea, the fact of what is it that we're at with the theology. And this is where, beyond the history of it with the racism, you also have, again, the stigmatization of mental health. You have we have to wear masks within the church. We have to do this. We have to look a certain way and act a certain way, because the idea of the fact that mourning is a type of worship just doesn't compute. I don't remember what it was part of the Kingdom on the Road discussion when we were in 2 Samuel 12. And we had a troll come in that almost caused me to give a 3-hour sermon, and Joe was willing to let me, but I held back. But this is part of what we see with David in chapter 12. And this is what we see with a lot of Christians when they hit a certain level of mourning. Mourning as a psychological response, your body is basically shutting down because of the sorrow and the depression. It's a safety mechanism. Your body is preventing you from hurting itself too much from the weight of what you are carrying. And this is where, for believers, it's actually a very beautiful thing for those of us that are believers, because it's one of the few areas where we can actually see normally where we are set apart from the rest, is that eventually you get down to a point where everything else has shut down, the point that the only thing that is left is the Spirit talking. And the only way you can express it is through worship. But that doesn't look like what is classified as worship on Spotify a lot of the times.
Yeah. So I would say this, because I think at some point this conversation only has so many legs, because we're getting to the idea that it is born out of fear and ignorance. If you have a an instinct to pull away from something, like bad music rolling into into the thing, or like a pop star, casting spells and nonsense, stuff like that, ask yourself a question: what is driving it? What's driving that? Because we're sitting here, and, like, for me, I am not holding back, because it's just has to be called for what it is. But it's a long road if all you're trying to do is weed out the people who don't belong, or weed out the bad expressions of faith, or something along those lines, and you are so totally missing the immersive experience of having a relationship with God, because you cannot be fighting others and also have an in-depth relationship with God. You cannot. because you are prioritizing enemies over neighbors, and that's so hard for people to hear. That's so hard, because we live at a point now where we are deep enough into this horrifically terrible country's history, um to have institutionalism
Yeah.
where this is not America's way of thinking about it. It's just a way of thinking about
Mm-hmm.
it. And if all you've ever heard is fear-based theology, all you've ever heard is a superiority complex based off of whatever criteria you want to throw in there, then that's going to be how you're going to process the world.
Yep.
And I can't convince you otherwise. It's not my job to convince you otherwise. It's my job to say, workshop that with the Spirit. Because
Mm-hmm.
in a larger context, when you break down the entirety of the story,
Hope.
it's not about that. It's not about the idea that we need to guard ourselves in such a way that says, oh, look at how good that we are, look at how prim and proper we are, and all of that sort of stuff. We think that it's ancient past, ancient history to talk about the 1700s, to talk about the 1800s, to talk about the roots of Christianity in America, to talk about Puritanism, to talk about all of these different expressions of worship. And we think about it, or yeah, well, a life with God, whatever. That like these expressions of our faith we are so totally disconnected from that part of history where people were getting burnt alive or crushed under boulders or all of that sort of stuff. We're literally seeing the exact same witch hunt
Mm-hmm.
that happened during the Salem witch trials happening today. It just has a different form.
Yeah.
We're not running around calling people witches. We're just calling things demonic.
Or
And in this country, we have a very singular mindset when it comes to spirituality. And anything that doesn't fit a classical look for this country at spirituality is deemed incorrect, is deemed like even within the faith, like the mystics, the desert fathers, the monks, a lot of Catholics from throughout the years, a lot of Messianic Jews, a lot
mm-hmm.
of people have fallen into the same category because they didn't fit in with a classical expression of Christianity. And so when we think about where did these thought processes originate from, we have to be willing to be authentic if we want the truth to come out. So
Yeah.
it's one of those things that when we wrap our minds around the diversity of expression of worship, we have to look at what are our core thoughts and how do we process God? How do we process the point of being a Christian in the world and all of that sort of stuff? Because there's always going to be a thing. There's always going to be a group of people who are saying Christian movies are the only good movies. Which is categorically untrue. Christian
Yeah.
movies are garbage.
Yeah.
Christian movies are literally the worst produced movies to ever be created. And y'all, I have watched the depths of horror. I have watched some of the most D level horror that you could wrap your mind around. And I come from the world of loving a form of expression called tokusatsu, which is Suitmation, which is Godzilla and Super Sentai and Kamen Rider and all of these like kaiju, big monster, all of that sort of stuff, where you can literally see the strings. You can literally
Literally,
see
yes.
the sets that are getting knocked down that are literally just like cardboard
Cardboard.
and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Like you can tell all of that, and I still categorically put Christian movies as the absolute total worst of any of them. And when it comes to Christian music, there are small pockets of Christian music that I dig a lot. There are some folks that I love within the Christian music scene. It's not a all of it sucks. Most of it that's being played on the radio is
Yeah.
absolutely terrible. But part of that is for me. I don't. Oh, God is good. Okay, yeah, God is good, but I don't feel this is cupcakes.
Yeah.
You're handing me a thing of cotton candy. You know what I mean? I want somebody who's seen some things. I want somebody that can make me feel a thing. That's always been what music has been about for me. Is an expression of a feeling. Been that because it's got to be born from the depths of who you are. And because if you do that, then you're going to create something that's going to resonate with somebody else too.
Yeah.
Not
You need to
just
tell me.
this churning out of music that is only around for a year and then
Mhm.
gets forgotten.
Yeah. You need to tell me why God is good,
Yeah.
not just say it. You know,
Yep.
and that's where, yeah, it's and it gets rough when we do that because sometimes we do just need reminded.
Yep.
But if you're going to be categorizing this as your number one hit, you should be telling us why.
Yep.
Now, the part of what you hit, and this is where we'll start shutting down and segueing out. Part of what you hit there is this idea of we're seeing enemies instead of neighbors, and this has been the theme of a lot of the work that we've been doing within Misfits for 2 years now, but especially over the past couple of weeks. So if those that have wondered where we've gone, microphone wise, where we've gone, there's been a shift in the way that we are having to do things. Some of it is actually basically what we talked about today within the Is It Pagan world, as far as with music and things like that, is that there has been just a lot going on in the world. There's been a lot of changes culturally. There's been a lot of, well, this is Christian, this is not Christian, this is how Christianity is supposed to look, this is how Christianity is not supposed to look. A lot. And unfortunately, now we are in a. So the first piece that we wrote back, I don't even remember what it was, September maybe, on Jeremiah 25 is where those of you that are wondering where Misfits went, that's where you should start. Because it explains the role that Misfits has always had and what that looks like in today's world. Part of what that looks like, Joe and I had this discussion, what was it, last week we had this discussion, 2 weeks ago? A lot of what that means is that because of where we are right now culturally, writing is much more of what is needed than speaking. And so if you are wondering why we haven't released an episode, it's because we've been writing a lot more. So those of you that don't know, go to ministrymisfits.com/blog. You'll be able to find stuff there. If we aren't recording, we're writing. We're still going to be recording because we have conversations like this that we can't write about. We have to talk because then we get to listen to Joe alienate half of the fan base that we probably had as he goes and destroys every music genre and pop culture icon. But a lot of it is also that we're having to write stuff out. And one of the things that we've been writing lately is that we have been writing a lot on this theme of enemies.
Yeah.
The first piece that we did on it a couple weeks ago, we highlighted why it is that we desire to have enemies as humans. And it falls back to Gio's on your side there, Joe. Says he was on a mission, leave him be. A lot of this stuff with enemies and things like that falls back to Genesis chapter 3. A need to blame somebody, a need to transfer shame onto somebody else. From there, what we just did, or the one that we just released a couple of days ago. Actually, I think we just released it yesterday. Actually, maybe it was Sunday. Is one where we break down what it means to what Matthew 5 actually says regarding enemies and loving your enemies and loving your neighbor. And one of the key things in there is that when you actually look at the words Jesus uses, neighbor is anyone you have commonality with. enemy is someone that you find irreconcilable as an irreconcilable adversary. Means you cannot ever get along with this person. It will forever be hostility. This is the key to a lot of these discussions, is that we have decided there are things that we cannot reconcile. And so they are always going to be other. But again, the reality of the gospel is that Jesus is able to reconcile all of it, is the first part of this. There is nothing that is irreconcilable. The second part of this, though, is the fact that we all have a single commonality in the fact that all of us bear the image of God. And if we can start with that, then everybody is our neighbor and no one is our enemy. But to do that requires us to do a lot of this soul searching and stuff that we were talking about today. We have to look at why we think these things. Why is it that we think that this makes somebody evil and this makes somebody good? Why is it that we think that this is okay, but this isn't? I mean, even the whole God's not dead thing. Some of the people that I still see hold this up as this great movie are ones that will say rock music is evil and not realize that the whole thing was based off of a Christian rock song. And there's even a rock concert in it.
It literally happens in the movie. Yep.
And unfortunately, we have learned over the past 3-4 months that the main singer of the band in that movie was a serial assaulter during the time that all of this was going on.
Decades. Literally decades.
But we're going to hold that up as look at this great thing. So we're going to ignore all of the background and everything to get to the one little message we want, but we won't ignore the fact that this has drums in it. So who cares if they're worshiping God? It's automatically sinful. Yep. Because we have decided that that is what cannot be reconciled. Yep. But the reality is that God is able to reconcile all of it. Mm-hmm. So with that in mind, again, those of you that are listening later on to Misfits, that's where we've been, is we've been writing more. We're going to continue to be writing more. It's just the nature of the world we're in right now. If things change, we probably will start recording more again. If things continue the way that they're looking, we're going to be writing a lot more than we're on the air. You can still catch us, though, Kingdom on the Road on Friday mornings, although we're taking a break for the holidays. Pastor Reacts is going to be on occasionally. We may have an Is It Pagan here and there over the next month or so. So you'll still see us around. It's just it won't be in the normal Misfit setting. However, it is almost December, which means the 12 days of Misfits are almost here. So those that don't know what we're talking about, every December we do the 12 days of Misfits, where I cause people to question their sanity for 12 days straight. As we have a guest come on doing some sort of like almost a game show style Advent devotional trivia mashup, where we watch people's head explode because they realize they know the answer, but they have no idea why they can't say it. All that good stuff. Notice year,
how I've never been on 12 days.
That's why. Yeah. He knows. However, we did find a willing victim this year. I mean, a willing participant this year. And that is Rico Lane from KFM. He's the host of Blestimony. He also does the Sunday evening stream with Ant, doing the deep dive sermon stuff, all of that. He's been around. Some people also should recognize him because he was also doing Let It Rip when Let It Rip was going on. I think he even was with us for a couple Kingdom on the Roads a couple summers ago.
Rico is the longest standing member of the team. He and I worked together since the original iteration of Kingdom on the Road.
Yeah, he's been around. So most of you probably recognize him or should at least know his name. But Rico is going to be joining me. We don't exactly know what format we're going with yet. We don't know exactly, all of that, but it will be happening. Gio, I'm trying to figure out the best way to do it. I may be able to get it broadcasted to Twitch, but probably not. These are very short 15-minute segments. So you're going to have to go find us on YouTube most likely for those.
Live recording. Do a live recording.
We can't do live recordings 12 days in a row. We already established Rico and I's schedule will not line up to be able to do that. So we'll but yeah, we'll let you guys know how that's going to go down, but that'll be every day from December 13th through the 24th. Very short 5 to 15 minute segments, walking through different parts of Advent and Christmas and Christmas traditions, Christmas stories, Christmas prophecies, Christmas songs, all that good stuff, depending on which way we want to go this year. Last year we destroyed Tamiko's mind because we decided to have him interpret clip art over Zoom. So we'll see how it goes this year, but that'll be coming up December 13th, 24th. Also, make sure you guys are following us over on all the KFM broadcasting stuff to be aware of when we are releasing the different Christmas stuff. Every year, Joe does a Christmas sermon with Buddy Walk. He and I also do some Advent blogs every year. We're hoping that there's going to be some more from the team also doing that this year, looking at the will of God and what that means and what that is. And it's, again, a lot of the stuff we talked about today. It's a lot of stuff we've been talking about in Kingdom on the Road for the past month, 6 months or so. A lot of that good stuff. So make sure you're following us. It's at KFM Broadcasting on all the social media channels, and then kfmbroadcasting.com. Those of you that are looking for prayer, you can also go to kfmbroadcasting.com/prayer. That takes you to the prayer portal where you can fill out a short little form with your prayer requests, any information you want us to have, and that will be sent off to our prayer team so that we can pray for you and with you for whatever it is that you are needing. With the holidays coming up, I'm sure there's a lot there that needs prayed for. So, Joe, you got anything I missed?
No, I think you wrapped it.
Awesome. So again, we don't know when we'll be back, Misfits. We don't know when we'll be back. Is It Pagan? We don't even know when it will be back. Pastor Reacts, Kingdom on the Road, KFM in general, but we will be around eventually. So go check out all that good stuff, and we will see you all whenever we see you.
The Ministry Misfits podcast is a production of Ministry Misfit Media in association with Overwhelming Victory. Dr. Greg Linville and Andrew Fouts are our executive producers, and Brandon Simmons is associate producer. The Ministry Misfits theme song is written and produced by J.D. Laird and Laird Creative Agency. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can email us at ministrymisfitmedia@gmail.com or by following @ministrymisfit on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. You can also visit our website at www.ministrymisfits.com or through bio.link/ministrymisfits. If you would like to support Ministry Misfits, you can become a patron by going to patreon.com/ministrymisfits.